Hi, everyone. Carl Steinbeck here. Good afternoon. Wanted to jump on this Kouri Richins case. It's out in Utah, south of Salt Lake City there. And it's really an interesting case to follow. I've been following bits and pieces here this week, but I wanted to go ahead and jump in and sort of condense down some of the things that have been happening. So right now I'm going to cover the opening statements that happened earlier this week on Monday, and then I'm going to zip through some of the key takeaways from the rest of the week over the next couple days, so I can jump in and be on schedule then for this day 6 trial on Monday. So I hope to get on here tonight as well. But right now, I just want to cover the opening statements. And Kouri Richins is accused of murdering her husband. He was a father of a couple kids they had as well. And she was in the home flipping business where she was having multiple homes at one time in the process of being purchased, fixed up, and then sold as a remodeled home. So she would find homes in distress or needing some significant repair, including a house that was an absolute mansion of, like, I think it was 20,000 square feet, along with a guest house of 3 to 4,000 square feet as well. But it was only in a partial state of completion. The inside was completely just studs and no completion whatsoever. The outside even didn't even have siding on all the walls. So it basically only had a roof and windows and some interior walls being exposed. So it was a massive project. I mean, it would say they got it for around $2 million, and it would cost a couple more $1 million to fix up. So this thing was her baby, though, and she wanted this thing done, and she wanted to close on it. And interesting thing is, she was able to close on the house the day after he was murdered, because apparently, as we'll see, and that's going to be disputed whether he was approving or not of this massive project she's wanted to take on. He, meanwhile, was a stonemason and had a very successful business doing stonemasonry work. Eric Richins is the husband that was murdered. So let's go ahead and jump on in here.
They'll be brought to the court's attention, and the entire case may have to be retried. So please be careful.
Judges addressing the jury.
Regarding note taking, please remember that we do not have transcripts of trial testimony. So when deliberating at the end of the case, you will need to rely on your memory of each witness's testimony. So please feel free to take notes during the trial to help you remember the evidence, but please don't let your note taking distract you. Your notes are not evidence in and of themselves, and they may be incomplete. All right, we'll now proceed with opening statements. Mr. Bloodworth, let me make sure you have what you need here.
That's Kouri right there.
Okay.
Glare minimized. It is the evening of March the 3rd, 2022. The defendant, Kouri Richins, her husband, Eric Richins, and their 3 children, 9-year-old Carter, 7-year-old Ashton, and 5-year-old Weston, are at their home in Camas. Eric Richins lived for his 3 boys. At 7:22 p.m., Kouri Richins' boyfriend, Robert Josh Grossman.
Hear that? It looks like a happy family, and then all of a sudden the prosecutor's introducing another character, her boyfriend. That looks really bad for Kouri Richins right here. A lot of folks there, very conservative community. This is Utah, one of the most conservative states in America, and that kind of thing. By a lot of jurors would be right then and there have a real displeasure with thinking that this is not a woman of high character. So what else is she capable of doing?
Texts Kouri Richins an image of 2 people romantically kissing. The image is captioned, "Love you." At 8:36, Kouri Richins replies, "Love you." The boys go to bed. Kouri Richins makes Eric a drink and takes it to him in their bedroom. He drinks on the bed. She departs the bedroom. Kouri Richins returns to the bedroom at about 3:00 a.m. She feels that Eric is cold. She nudges him. He does not respond. She sees that he is stiff and pale. His mouth is wide open. At 3:06 a.m., Kouri Richins unlocks her cell phone. She travels 243 feet beginning at 3:08 a.m. She unlocks her cell phone again at 3:10, 3:15, and twice at 3:19. At 3:21, Kouri Richins unlocks her cell phone and calls 911. Paramedics respond, but they are unable to revive Eric. He has been.
So that's like a 21-minute delay in calling 911. This is hugely damaging, very incriminating against Kouri here. Seeing that amount of time frame to call 911, right there, automatically, this thing's looking highly, highly suspicious. It looks like something, some guilt of Kouri trying to figure out what she can do to prep for the cops to arrive in the ambulance, because you don't want to call him too soon in case there's a chance he could survive. So you got to make sure the body's fully dead before you call.
No pulse, he is cold. They pronounce him dead at 3:58 a.m. on March the 4th, but they think he has been dead a while. My name again is Brad Bloodworth. I am one of Summit County's criminal prosecutors who, along with Lindsay Shervinack and Fred Burmester, will present to you the state of Utah's aggravated murder case against Kouri Darden Richins for causing the poisoning death of her husband and the father of her 3 children, Eric Richins. The state will also prove to you that 2 weeks before murdering Eric Richins, Kouri Richins attempted to murder him. And 2 weeks before that, by fraud and forgery, she took out an insurance policy on his life.
Objection, can we approach?
Okay, so for defense counsel to object to something like this, normally it's like a professional courtesy. You do not object unless something's completely out of line by the prosecution. Defense counsel should not object. So what did he say that's improper here? I mean, she's charged with murder, attempted murder. She's charged with forgery as well for trying to get life insurance. So why would you object to
Weeks before attempting to murder Eric Richins, Kouri Richins took out an insurance policy by fraud and forgery on Eric's life.
So he's saying the same thing and getting very specific on what she did. That's part of one of the charges. So I think the prosecutor won out on this defense objection because he's just continuing right on to where he left off.
And 2 weeks after Eric died, she submitted a fraudulent claim on yet another insurance policy. In this opening statement, I will summarize for you some of the evidence that the state will present over the next few days, perhaps weeks, so that you have a framework to assemble and analyze all of the evidence. The evidence will prove that Kouri Richins murdered Eric for his money and to get a fresh start at life. More than anything,
Right, there's
she
motive.
wanted his money to perpetuate her facade of privilege, affluence, and success. Kouri Richins owned a house flipping business. She would purchase, rehab, and resell homes. She presented herself to friends and business associates as remarkably successful. The evidence will prove that on the day that Eric died, Kouri Richins owed over $4.5 million to over 20 different lenders. And she did not have the ability to service that debt because her bank accounts were exhausted and her credit was exhausted. She had been taking out new loans to include payday loans to service existing loans, but her new credit was drying up. In the 5 months leading to Eric Richins' death, Kouri Richins overdrafted over 200 transactions, totaling over $300,000.
That's a lot.
And on the day that Eric died, Kouri Richins was scheduled to close on an unfinished and derelict mansion in Midway, and thus take on an additional $3.2 million in debt. She did not have the financial ability to service that debt, to rehab the mansion, or to hold on to it long enough.
The one thing I'm wondering, though, if she's drowning in all this debt, had $300,000 of her business checks basically needing overdraft protection to cover them, then how is she able to secure a loan of over $3 million for this new mansion that's in such a state of bad condition?
To resell it. The mansion may appear impressive from a distance, but upon close inspection, it is just a facade.
Just a shell.
On the other hand, on the day that Eric died, his estate was worth over $4 million. And the evidence will prove that Kouri Richins believed she would inherit it all. She believed that she would inherit Eric's $2 million interest in a stonemasonry business, an interest that a prenuptial agreement prevented her from getting any part of if they divorced, but permitted her to get all of if Eric died while they were married. She believed that she would inherit the $1 million or so home that they lived in, but that Eric owned separate and apart from her. And she believed that she would benefit from nearly $2 million in insurance on Eric's life, to include the $100,000 policy that she took out a few weeks before he died. Now, for Kouri Richins' fresh start at life motive.
So she definitely had massive financial pressures here. And if she has a boyfriend and this husband of hers she's looking to punch out of her life, then murder for her was the perfect solution. But boy, did this backfire on her.
This motive overlaps with her money motive. She needed Eric Richins' money to get her fresh start at life. The evidence will prove that Kouri Richins was chronically unhappy in her marriage. She thought that having children would make her happier, but it did not. She consulted with a divorce attorney in the months leading up to Eric's death. 3 months before Eric's death, Kouri Richins booked a $4,000, 5-night, all-inclusive vacation for her and her boyfriend, Robert Josh Grossman, at the Secrets St. Martin's Resort and Spa in the Caribbean. They were to check in the month after Eric died. Three weeks before Eric's death, 15 days before Eric's death, 1 day before the charge, attempted murder, Kouri Richins text messaged Josh Grossman, "If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me tomorrow, you would? I just want to lay on the couch and cuddle you. Watch a murder documentary and snuggle." Five days.
She's planning an exit, totally an exit plan here, but Eric is in the way, and she's not going to get a whole lot if she divorces him. So there was a huge financial motive. The only way she could get assets, as she believed at the time of the murder, was to go ahead and exterminate him.
After the charged attempted murder and 11 days before the charged murder, Kouri Richins text messaged Josh Grossman, "Babe, I miss you. I want you today, every day. Not just sexually, but physically, mentally, every day when I wake up. I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together. If he could just go away."
There you go. Go away. Go away to the grave.
"And you could just be here. Life would be so perfect. I love you. I don't know what my deal is today. I'm sorry."
Yep, that's super damning information for the jury to consider, and to have it up on the screen. I really like the fact that this prosecutor, what's his last name, Brad Bloodworth, and so for him to show these kind of words of the defendant are so useful to convict folks. So here's what he's doing. He's presenting it on the screen for the jury to see, and this is going to be etched in their minds this whole time throughout the trial. It's like, wow, she is like, if this doesn't give away the fact that she had massive amounts of motive to murder him, then I don't know what does.
9 days after the charged attempted murder, 1 week before the charged murder, Kouri Richins text messaged her boyfriend, "I have a crazy dream. You quit your job. I divorce and come up with millions and millions. We buy Midway and live in the guest house and rent out the huge house as a big event center. $15,000 a day like they charge down the road, maybe $12,000 to stay competitive. And we will just run the event center as our daily job and hang out every day, raise some kids, have a little farm. Deal?"
All this planning of a future life together, it sounds like it's all on her. We're not hearing anything from this Grossman guy about, yeah, I'm really into you as well. Sounds like it's more of a one-sided deal.
Just over 2 weeks after Eric Richins' death, Kouri Richins text messaged her boyfriend a link to the Secret St. Martin's Resort and Spa in the Caribbean and asked, "Are we there yet?" One month and 5 days after Eric Richins' death, Kouri Richins texted, "I think I want you to be my husband one day."
He's maybe sitting there going, well, that's nice, because keep talking about it, because I have no intentions.
Now for the attempted murder charge. Carmen Lauber was a house cleaner who worked for Kouri Richins' aunt's house cleaning company. She cleaned Kouri Richins' house. She knew Kouri Richins for nearly 9 years. Kouri Richins knew that Carmen Lauber had a criminal history involving drugs. The evidence will prove that on February the 11th, 2022, 3 days before the charged attempted murder, Carmen Lauber, at Kouri Richins' request, purchased illicit pills from a street drug dealer who was a friend of a friend. And she gave those pills to Kouri Richins.
Prosecutor could go a little bit faster than this, but he's just making sure the jury really digests what he's saying. So he's doing pretty good here, I would say, and he's bringing some very, very damaging evidence against Kouri. I mean, she looks really, really in a bad shape right now.
That street dealer's name is Robert Crozier, and he sold Carmen Lauber the pills at a Draper in Maverick. 3 days later, on Valentine's Day, Kouri Richins purchased a sandwich from the Mirror Lake Diner and left it for Eric Richins. She then departed Camas and met up with Josh Grossman an hour away. At 11:33 that morning, Eric texted Kouri Richins, "I'm gonna lay down for a bit. If I don't start getting better, I'm gonna head to the hospital soon." Shortly thereafter, all activity on Eric's cell phone ceased for nearly 90 minutes in the middle of a busy workday. Once activity resumed, Eric Richins called his 2 best friends. They sounded to him scared, somber, confused, bewildered. A few days after that, Kouri Richins asked Carmen Lauber if she could get something stronger. The evidence will prove that on February the 26th, 5 or 6 days before Eric's death, Carmen Lauber, again at Kouri Richins' request, purchased pills from the same street dealer at the same Maverick in Draper. And she left those pills at a home that Kouri Richins was just finishing up a rehab on. The evidence will prove that those illicit pills contained fentanyl. The autopsy and toxicology report shows that Eric Richins died of fentanyl poisoning. He had several times a lethal amount of fentanyl in his blood and more in his stomach. And that extraordinary amount of fentanyl was intentional, not accidental. The evidence will prove that time and again, Kouri Richins.
She looks very cold, no emotion, and she looks very calculating.
Tried to cover up her attempted murder and ultimate murder of Eric Richins. When confronted with Eric's reaction on Valentine's Day, Kouri Richins text messaged her friend. It was Valentine's Day, and Eric and I were both working from home that day, and I ordered lunch from Mirror Lake. He never broke out in hives or used an EpiPen. I was fucking with him. Bailey was there too. He said the sandwich hurt his stomach, so he was going to nap. No hives, no EpiPen. Kouri Richins was an hour away from Eric Richins with her boyfriend. Regarding the morning of Eric Richins' death, Kouri Richins wrote in a notebook that she entered their room at 3:20 a.m. She saw that when she nudged Eric, nothing happened. She grabbed her phone and called 911. She first grabbed her phone at least 3:06 a.m. and delayed calling 911 at least 15 minutes. The evidence will also prove that Kouri Richins had a guilty conscience. The morning that Eric died, his family came over. Kouri Richins could not face her children or Eric's dad, Eric Richins.
Sounds familiar. Sounds familiar, like Harvey Adelson.
A few days after Eric's death, Kouri Richins and her boyfriend, Josh, they drove into the Uintas and talked about Eric's death for the first time. Kouri Richins asked Josh, while serving in Iraq, did you ever kill anyone? When he responded, she asked, how did that make you feel? Along the lines of both cover up and guilty conscience, Kouri Richins' text messages and other data from Kouri Richins' phone for the 2 months leading up to Eric Richins' death and a week or two after have all been deleted.
This prosecutor is doing something I highly always recommend is don't read off of a script. So many prosecutors, defense attorneys, and just trial attorneys in general read off scripts, their whole openings sketched out. And they're just reading. It's like story time reading. And it's just, I think it really turns off the jury and bores them. So this guy, if you notice, he's like totally on cue. He's not missing a beat. I think he could go a little bit faster and still keep the flow and of detailed information properly for the jury. But I think this is really good. I give him an A so far on presentation, and also the graphics he's pulling into this to weave into his story he's doing an excellent job here.
Police seized that phone. She got a new phone. And on that new phone, there were the following internet searches. Can cops uncover deleted messages iPhone? Can you delete everything off an old iPhone without actually having it? Can deleted text messages be retrieved from an iPhone? How to completely wipe an iPhone clear remotely? How to permanently delete information from an iPhone remotely?
Covering the tracks, like you said.
On April the 13th, 2022, about 5 weeks after Eric Richins' death, detectives informed Kouri Richins that the autopsy and toxicology results show that Eric died of fentanyl poisoning. Thereafter, searches on her phone include If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? Can cops force you to do a lie detector test? Women, Utah prison, luxury prisons for the rich in America.
Ah. Luxury prisons. I never heard of that.
Almost a year after Eric Richins' death, when Kouri Richins knew the police were investigating her for his death, Kouri Richins published a children's book on how to deal with the loss of a parent. And she promoted that children's book on local television and local radio.
Looks like a pretty good book, too, to help little children. How terrible. Does she have any
The
guilt?
state will present to you this evidence and more through a series of fact witnesses, expert witnesses, documents, and Kouri Richins' own words. As you evaluate the evidence and you consider it and you weigh it, let me offer 4 recommendations. The first is the evidence will prove that Kouri Richins murdered Eric Richins, but also consider the evidence that proves that Eric Richins did not kill himself or die accidentally. The evidence will prove that Kouri Richins had the means, motive, and opportunity to murder Eric Richins. But please consider the evidence that proves no one else did. Consider the evidence leading up to Eric Richins' death that proves that Kouri Richins murdered him, but also consider the evidence after Eric's death that also proves it. As you evaluate Kouri Richins' conduct, consider the evidence that proves that she richly values and trades on her perceived appearance, affluence, privilege, and success. Let me please highlight 2 of the judge's instructions that he just provided. The first is stay focused on the evidence. What the attorneys say, how they say it, their voice inflection, none of that is evidence. Please stay focused on the evidence. Please take notes. As he said, you will probably only hear from a witness one time, and that is when the witness testifies. At the end of the trial, I'll stand back up here. And in closing argument, we will analyze the evidence. We will apply it to the elements that the judge instructed you on. And the state of Utah will ask you to find Kouri Darden Richins guilty of the aggravated murder of Eric Richins, the attempted aggravated murder of Eric Richins, 2 counts of insurance fraud and forgery. Back for a moment to the morning of March the 4th, 2022. It is 8:30. Medical examiners place Eric's body in a body bag onto a stretcher, and they wheel him out of his home for the last time. His boys are upstairs with their uncle.
Man.
Kouri,
Can you imagine doing that with your own kids in the house, killing their dad, and you're in the house, and these sweet young things are just up there having no idea what's going on.
Richins has not yet told them that Eric is dead, and she won't for a few more hours. The last of the sheriff's deputies leave, crime scene techs, medical examiners. And on Kouri Richins' phone, the following 3 images are accessed.
Look at that. All that money, idiots everywhere, and something else you can't see is covered up by court logo. I'm so rich or something like that. That's how she was looking at it. This was a financial transaction. Looks really
Yes.
Just
bad.
tap it for me.
We need Katie to be connected.
She is.
Presumed
It's a
innocent.
black screen
but
at the moment. Is that
it's very
intentional?
damning against her. I don't know how she's going to be able to.
Turn.
Her defense attorneys bamboozle a jury into not thinking she's guilty.
Katie, you ready to go?
There's her defense attorney, or lead defense attorney.
My apologies. One moment. My error.
Let's see how she does.
What's the address of the emergency? My husband's not breathing. He's cold. Okay, what's the address? 282 Willow Court. 282 Willow Court? Uh-huh. Okay, what's a good phone number in case we get disconnected? 435 671 4987. Okay, it's going to be in Francis. Okay, tell me exactly what happened. I don't know. I just came in. I was sleeping with my kids. Okay, I can't understand you. I need you to take a deep breath. What's going on? I don't know. I was sleeping in with my kids. I just came in our bed, and I turned over, and he's just cold. He's just cold. Who's cold? My husband. I turned the light on.
No emotion whatsoever right here in the courtroom as this is going on. And she doesn't sound in a frantic mode. Hurry, get over here, send an ambulance right away.
He's not breathing?
Ooh.
He's not breathing? I need you to confirm it for me. Is he not
This sounds fake. Everything's fake here. It was all an act.
breathing? No. Okay, can you do CPR? No, I don't know how. You don't know? I'm going to tell you how to. Are you willing to do CPR? Yeah. Okay.
Those were the sounds of a wife becoming a widow. 6.5 hours before that.
To me, that sounds incriminating. So, defense attorney, what's her name? Kathy Nestor, starting out like that. I don't think that's a good start.
Terrible phone call. Eric and Kouri Richins were in that same bedroom, and they were celebrating. They were celebrating because Kouri was about to close on the biggest real estate deal that her company had ever done. She was about to close on something called the Midway Mansion. Slide 2, please. A sprawling multi-million-dollar home in Midway that had been abandoned before construction was completed. And the plan was to fix it up just enough to resell it. In other words, repair the windows, make it look nice. There had been vandalism inside, clean it all out, get it ready to flip and sell. And the concept is to sell it for millions more than the bargain basement price they got, because it was just a dilapidated, falling apart, abandoned property. And the plan was to flip it for so much that she was going to make
Let's see the accounting
millions
for
of
teachers.
dollars of profit, at least $2 million for her and for all of her investors. And Eric was a part of this. Eric had been out at the property that very day, the day that he died, spreading gravel to make it look nice for open houses, and so that it'd be ready as soon as they closed. These two had other things to celebrate on March 3rd, besides this big deal that was going to make them a lot of money. One of the things they had to
How do we know that Eric was in agreement with that? How do we know Eric didn't say, no, we're not doing this? This is like a huge risk. You're already drowning in debt. You're going to take on more debt to try to flip this thing. And the kind of costs you have on a house like that, or it's going to be in the millions. And who has what they put into it and what they paid for it? Who has millions more to pay for something like that? So somebody's going to pay 6 to 10 million for a house like that in that area.
celebrate was that Eric's business was doing great. Can we have slide 3? Eric worked as a stonemason, and you're going to see, this is 2020. This isn't even the year before he died. So his income kept going up and up. But he declared to the IRS that he made over $750,000 that year. That was just in 1 year of what Eric was bringing into their marriage and their family. They also lived in a beautiful home, slide 4. It was a beautiful home. They got married in that home. That home was half Kouri's. That's how it works in marriage. You get half of a home as soon as you live in it. They also had a 2-story garage that you can kind of see in that picture a little bit back from the house. And it was filled, slide 5. It was filled with exotic animals. Eric was a huge hunter. He went on trips all over the world. They had the kind of money that they were blessed with. He could travel to Africa and travel to Mexico, which he did 2 weeks before he died. He was in Mexico hunting an
I don't know why somebody would want to kill a giraffe. That really
exotic
made me happy to
sheep,
see that.
actually. They had four-wheelers. They had lots of vehicles. They had snowmobiles and ATVs and ski equipment. They were very blessed. They had a lot to celebrate. They also had a wonderful family. Slide 6. The one thing that I don't think anybody in this courtroom is ever going to challenge, us included, is that Eric and Kouri adored their boys. They were their world. They were in that place that those of us who've had kids have all been in, where you spend your days driving them around to soccer and all their activities, and they're just the center of your world. And that's how both of these parents felt about their kids. They loved.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, right? Haven't we seen another trial? Talk about how much someone loved their children and stuff like that. Grandchildren.
Them a lot. And what's more important is that the boys adored their father, adored them, adored him. And Kouri knew that about her sons and about her family. Their marriage had survived through some rough times, and you're going to hear about that.
I like the flow of this attorney. She's talking quicker than the prosecutor, but she is having notes to go off of. So she's not reading off of notes this far into it. So that's like sort of like a crutch, but it's an acceptable one rather than just reading outright from a description. She's making good eye contact with the jury, and she sort of has the right tone and cadence about it. So I think she's doing a good job as well.
Like any marriage, it wasn't a perfect marriage. They'd gone through a really bad year where they both contemplated divorce, and they did what a lot of couples do. They went to marriage counseling, they worked it out, and they decided to stick it out, and they did.
Yeah, but then here's the thing: as a prosecutor and defense counsel, you're in front of this jury. You got to have credibility, and right there, she says they worked it out, and yet we know from the prosecution's slides that she was having an affair with this guy Goodman and looking for ways to drop kick Eric out of her life. So this is very, very misleading here. You lost a lot of credibility with the jury when you made that statement.
You're going to hear testimony from one of Eric's closest friends that in the few weeks before Eric died, he and Kouri were the happiest together that he'd ever seen them. And you're going to hear that from one of Eric's closest friends.
Yeah, because she was so happy that Eric's going to be killed off here before long, and she's going to have everything that Eric owned to herself with her sidekick boyfriend.
Now, on March 3rd, Eric started sending excited texts before their celebration to Kouri, saying, hey, let's get together. Let's have some celebratory shots. Slide 7, please. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys aren't going to be able to read that. It's really small. But it basically says, thank you. You want to grab lunch today with a celebratory shot? That was Kouri saying she can't, that she has other plans. But he's excited. He wants to celebrate about the big closing. When Eric got home the evening of March 3rd, after he'd been out at the property spreading the gravel, he got home and they all had dinner together as a family. Kouri's mom dropped by. They visited with her mom. Her mom had actually been out at the property the same day with a carpenter trying to get some bids and get it ready to start getting it fixed up. Kouri's mom left. They tucked their boys into bed. And around 9 o'clock, they decided to have their celebratory shot. A friend had given them a gift of some of those, I'm sure you guys have seen them, those copper Moscow Mule cups that you make like in breweries and in bars. And they decided to try out their new cups. So Kouri made what's called a Moscow Mule. And they also had a little shot, which is Eric's idea, of a little lemon drop. They had their drinks. They actually didn't finish them and set the cups in the sink at the house right there.
Again, you see no motion throughout this from her. She's not thinking the last day that he was alive and how tragically he was killed off by an accident. Obviously, she's going to try to argue this is some kind of accident, or he'd intended to ingest some fentanyl, just not that much. So
around 9:30, they were getting ready to go to bed, and they heard one of the children who suffered from something called night terrors, where they scream out, they have nightmares. One of the children was crying out. So Kouri went to sleep with her son around 9:30 that night. You're going to hear the police. Kouri also told the police the day that they came to the house that she believed Eric might have had what we call a marijuana gummy. You're going to hear Eric loved marijuana gummies. He used them a lot. And the police found a whole bunch of them in the house, in his things, in his clothes, in his closet. You know, he was
actually call them THC gummies. So THC is the ingredient in marijuana that can give you those physiological effects, psychological effects. So that's not normally what they call it, marijuana.
Marijuana gummy user. Slide 8. These are all gummies that the police found in Eric's things. Some of them you can tell had commercial bags where he bought them from dispensaries. Some were in clear bags that he bought from somewhere else, the location unknown. So you take it down. So as they're getting ready to go to bed, oh, you're going to hear.
You think she'd have it more smooth where she's not saying what to put up, what to put down, which slide. It should be automatically flowing, just like the prosecutor had it. He wasn't telling somebody during his opening what slide to put up. And so also the time amount that the prosecutor argued, made a statement, was like right around 30 minutes. So that was a really good thing. I think if you go more than 30 minutes on any case, it's really this, you run the risk of boring the jury, even though it may be riveting information. So the defense counsel here is also not going to go over, I think, that as well. So good job by both counsel in that regard.
Hear that after Kouri left the room, Eric was on his phone and he was talking to a friend named Scott Wagner. And you're going to hear that Scott Wagner talked to him at 10 o'clock that night. That when Scott Wagner talked to him, he did not sound drunk. He did not sound high. He did not sound like he was on fentanyl or anything else. that there was no sound of the wife or children in the background, that he was alert, that he was having a totally normal conversation with Scott. And this was at 10 p.m. Shortly after 10 p.m., you're going to hear, forgot to mention, when Kouri left the bedroom, she has always maintained from beginning to end that she left her phone in the room, in the charger next to her bed, which we all do at night when we're about to go to bed. We charge our phones. Nothing unusual there. After 10 o'clock, around 10:30, so this is an hour after Kouri's left the bedroom and is in with her son, Kouri's phone is unlocked and moves just a few feet. Now you're going to hear Kouri's friends in this trial and some other people testify that Eric was always checking Kouri's phone. And you can kind of see why he probably was doing that based on what you've already heard from the state. Maybe.
Well, that's a truthful statement. Realizing your client you're representing is that much of a cheater, that her husband, who things are going so great. So that's another contradiction. Things are going so great, and everything got ironed out, and yet he's checking the phone. So obviously, he checks the phone a lot because he knows what she's up to or suspecting. It's never ended.
He had good reasons, but he checked her phone a lot. So we know he did that at about 10:30 because we have proof that the phone opened and closed, moved a short distance, like maybe walking around the bedroom, and then closed again. And that is the last thing we know for sure that Eric did the night that he died. Sometime after that, we don't know exactly when Eric died. Slide 9. When Eric died, his Apple Watch was hanging on a charger, nice and neat. His phone was in a charger on the nightstand. He was lying in his underwear, like when you go to bed, and he was on his back on his side of the bed. So it appears pretty clear that Eric went to bed and fell asleep and died in his sleep. You're also going to hear, slide 10, that there was an empty pill bottle right next to him in his nightstand. And I want you to pay careful attention to this. The empty pill bottle expired in 2016. Made out to him for pain pills.
Yeah, who placed that bottle there, that empty bottle?
Oh, that's going to become important later. Sometime after 3 a.m., Kouri wakes up and comes back into a dark bedroom. You're going to hear she unlocked her phone. Probably, we're not going to dispute the times that the state just mentioned. The phone gets unlocked shortly after 3 a.m., which is what time Kouri says from day one that she got up. She always tells the police, I got up at 3. The phone verifies that. The phone moved around the house a little bit. You're going to hear the distances in the house. There's going to be investigators that are going to tell you how many feet from the master bedroom to the bathroom to the kitchen. They're going to tell you about how many feet are in that house if you're walking around the house. It appears clear she walked around the house just a little bit for a few minutes. And then the phone stops being active, which is indicative of being back in the charger, indicative of not moving anymore. And a few minutes later, you hear the 911 call that you guys just heard. So that gives her enough time to crawl into the bed, touch her husband, and realize he's cold. Just about 3 minutes. That's all it took. And she picks her phone up, calls 911. You're going to see that the phone records prove all of this. At that time, I believe everyone's going to agree, and I think the state even admitted it in their opening. That's pretty clear he'd been dead for several hours. And you're going to actually see a photo when we pass, our blood pools in the position that we lay in. It's not circulating anymore because our heart's not working. And you're going to see a picture of his back. And you're going to see that the blood he had been dead long enough for the blood to pool on his back because he was laying on his back. So that usually indicates he'd been dead for several hours, and the medical examiner is going to tell you that. So those 6 hours, ladies and gentlemen, between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., somewhere in that time, Eric Richins died. Somewhere in that time, he ingested a fatal dose of fentanyl. What you will never hear after 4 years of investigation, where as recently as 2 weeks ago, they were back searching that house. After 4 years of investigation and 5 weeks of this trial, you know what you're never going to hear is how that fentanyl got inside of him, because there is zero evidence of that.
It's a circumstantial evidence that shows that motive, means, and methods, an opportunity to do all that, because she needed him out of her life to pursue that new life she wanted. And having him alive would mean she'd have to file for divorce, and she would not get anything out of his assets. And so this way, it's like just flown in millions of dollars between the life insurance of a couple $1 million, and he's got $4 million worth of property. She thought she was going to get all that and have the house that her dream house that she can have with her lover there, Mr. Grossman.
To this day, slide 11, please. You're going to see that his death certificate, oh, that's the wrong thing, Katie. Just take it down.
Not very smooth.
Sorry about that. That's the wrong thing. His death certificate reads that the manner of his death is still unknown to this day. You're going to hear testimony that a medical examiner has the ability to declare the manner of someone's death. It can be homicide, it can be suicide, it can be accidental overdose, it can be murder, it can be anything. To this day, the medical examiner, the professional that's the head of declaring how people die in the state of Utah, has never been able to determine the manner of Eric Richins' death. Now, you're going to hear first responders and law enforcement tell you that no fentanyl was found in the bedroom the night of his death. But you're also going to hear them that they didn't search for it. You know, we've all seen the TV shows, the crime shows. What do you do if there's a murder, right? If you think there's a murder, tape it off. No one gets in or out. It becomes a crime scene. You search everything. You search the closet. You search the bathroom. You search the vehicles. You search the house. You search the office. They didn't do that. All kinds of friends and family, and you're going to see video of all the people that were in the house that day. There was no restrictions on anybody. And guess what was sitting in the sink? The cups. They were sitting there. They were never taken. They were never tested. Nothing. The nanny ended up putting them in the dishwasher the next morning, and they still had fluid in them. You're going to hear the day after Eric died, Kouri, or I'm sorry, not day after, day of, they started interviewing Kouri over and over and over again about what happened that night. You're going to hear for yourselves that her explanation of what happened that night has never changed from that call you just listened to. As far as the timing, as far as what happened, never. Law enforcement secretly recorded her phone conversations for over a year after this incident. 2 years later, listening in to her conversations with her family to see if her story about what happened that night ever altered, ever changed.
So the jury's going to know she's been locked up this whole time. So that's going to come out.
You're going to hear it never changed. You're going to hear that before Eric's body was even taken out of their bedroom, Kouri was told the body was going to a morgue for an autopsy. So within an hour of the cops getting there, she knew there was going to be an autopsy of his body. And what happens when you have an autopsy? You figure out how someone died. That's what doctors do. They test your blood. They test your bodily tissues. So she knew that. But did she tell the police or the medical responders or the EMS, hey, guys, you might want to check for fentanyl. My husband used it all the time. Did she do that? Because with one sentence, she could have taken all suspicion off her and made this about a drug overdose. But she didn't. As a matter of fact, she could have staged a whole drug overdose scene with fentanyl pills on his stomach and everything all over the place and say, gosh, I tried to get him in rehab for years and I couldn't. But she didn't. And you know why? Because she told her truth. She told her truth over and over again. And it's exactly what she told that 911 operator that you just heard and you're going to hear over and over in trial. I don't know what happened. Now you're going to hear that Eric Richins' family simply could not accept that. They needed someone or something to blame for losing someone they loved that wasn't Eric himself. And that's totally understandable. No family ever wants to believe that behind closed doors, someone they love is using drugs. No one wants to believe that. But the family's need to make sense of Eric's death went way beyond what you would expect a normal grieving family to go through.
Yeah, that's a high risk maneuver here, attacking the surviving family of Eric Richins. That's a really high risk move. I'm not liking the hearing of that. If I'm in favor of the defense here, I'm like, ooh, that's not looking good. I mean, the jury can really get some bad feelings towards the attorney and Kouri for attacking the grieving family like that.
You will hear that as the detective arrived at the house, Eric's sisters spoke with the detective in the driveway. This is before anyone in the house knows how Eric died. If he had a heart attack, if he had an aneurysm, a lot of people were talking about aneurysms at the scene, and you're going to hear that. Nobody knew yet how he died. The sisters were telling the police Kouri probably did this. Kouri probably did this day one.
Because they know. That's a good point. They know. They knew what she was capable
His
of.
sister Katie tells the police, and you're going to hear her testify about this, that Kouri had recently found out that Eric had put all their assets in a trust and that Katie was in charge of the trust. She's going to say, I'm in charge. And that Kouri didn't like that. She told that to the police at the scene. So Kouri already knew before Eric ever died that his assets were protected in a trust and didn't automatically come to her if he died, that there were legal things you had to go through.
Okay, but it's still going to take care of the kids. She could still live richly off that. So this is not helpful to your side there, counsel.
You're going to hear that it didn't stop there. The Richins family hired a private investigator, and you're going to see how much they paid that private investigator. And it's almost $100,000. And they paid that investigator to spend every waking minute digging up as much dirt as he possibly could on Kouri Richins to try to implicate her in Eric's death. Even though the state already had all the evidence from the scene that night that would show what happened in those 6 hours, right? The investigator goes looking for skeletons in the closet.
Well, it shows motive. The actions before the day of the murder are relevant to show motive. And they found a lot of stuff. The prosecutor presented a lot of significantly damaging evidence against Kouri Richins here. So, you know what? If there wasn't any dirt to be found, then it would be fruitless. The 100,000 would be wasted. So, yeah, I don't see how this is helping the defense.
Did he find some? You're going to hear that after an exhaustive private investigation into every single thing about Kouri Richins' life, he uncovered plenty of things that I'm quite sure she's not proud of. She's not a perfect person. She's a flawed person. I would submit we all are. But the prosecutor just turned some of her most intimate, personal correspondence into entertainment with bubbles and slides. And they're going to continue to assassinate her character throughout this trial, so get ready.
Okay, so now you're saying the prosecutor's underhanded, shitty. You know what? The thing is, prosecutors are supposed to show bad character evidence to show motive. So there's rules that prevent other types of bad acts that don't come in under the rules of evidence. So I won't get into the details on that, but the judge is a gatekeeper on that. So if it's relevant and helpful to show motive and means and modus operandi and how things are done in her life to try to take out her husband, then all that kind of stuff is relevant and should come in to evidence.
The judge has instructed you not to prejudge this case and to wait until you hear all of the evidence before you make up your mind. So let me assure you, no marriage is what it appears on the surface. What happens when we close our bedroom door is very private and is not always known by family or friends. And I think you're going to learn a lot about Kouri and Eric's relationship in this trial. And I would ask you to wait before you go rush to judgment like they have about her sexual morality, her personal decisions, about her marriage, and about her family. The prosecution is going to spend days and weeks telling you all about arguments Kouri's had with her husband in years past. Problems in their marriage, yeah, they had them. Disagreements, infidelities, ups and downs in their marriage, all true. They're also going to tell you all about Kouri's business. They tore it apart. They examined every bank account, every real estate deal she ever did, her taxes, when she made money, when she lost money, if she paid her taxes on time, if she bounced checks, if she borrowed too much, if she didn't borrow enough, if she borrowed wisely, if she was too risky in her business. You're going to hear all of that. None of that has anything to do with those 6 hours, but you're going to sit through it and you're going to listen to all of it. And you're going to hear testimony about her most intimate personal and business affairs going back years before Eric died. The family and the private investigator even became convinced that Kouri had tried to kill Eric before on Valentine's Day, when he had an allergic reaction to a sandwich, drank some Benadryl, may or may not have taken an EpiPen shot, took a 2-hour nap, and then drove his kids to soccer. That's the evidence you're going to hear about Valentine's Day. You're going to hear that he had discussed with Kouri that he was going to drive the kids to soccer. So they're asking you to believe that she secretly put narcotics in her husband's food right before he's going to drive the 3 things that matter the most to her in the world to soccer.
Well, if you're willing to kill the kid's dad right when the kids are in the same house as him, it doesn't show a lot of concern, does it, for welfare of your kids? That right there is child endangerment. So
You're going to hear that Eric that this incident wasn't even a blip to Eric. He had a professional allergy doctor he saw very shortly after this incident. He never even brought this up. He never even talked about it with his doctor. You're going to hear that he laughed about it with one of Kouri's friends who visited shortly after. He thought it was funny. Interestingly, you're also going to hear that people who use oxycodone or hydrocodone, like that bottle said, also tend to have allergic reactions. They can have very similar symptoms if you use pain pills to the symptoms described of what Eric experienced on Valentine's Day. Here's what you're not going to see in this trial. You're not going to see one single bit of evidence showing what was in that sandwich, if he went to a doctor, if he did any tests run, because he didn't. No evidence at all. Now, the family's investigator regularly updated law enforcement on his investigation. He sent them everything he found. He sent them witnesses to interview. He sent them interviews he did of the witnesses first. You're going to hear this very same private investigator took Eric's computer before the police got it and had it for a long time in his possession, looking through all of Eric's computer. You're also going to hear Eric's family went and hired experts. They hired experts in toxicology, in finances, in handwriting analysis, paid them all a bunch of money. And now those same people that the family hired are going to appear here as witnesses for the state to tell.
I don't know what she's trying to do. Get the jury to not like Eric's family because they spent a lot of money to try to find out exactly what happened. I don't see how that's a winning argument here.
Testify against Kouri. You're going to hear that the family had constant communications with the prosecution team right up until they decided to charge Kouri a year later. Now, as you've already heard from this prosecutor, they're going to spend weeks in this trial trying to convince you that Kouri had reasons to kill her husband. because they can't show you that she did kill her husband. You're not going to hear a single one of Eric's family, Kouri's investors, Kouri's friends, her lover, her accountant, her broker, her lawyer, her marriage counselor, her accountants, her husband's friends, her husband's coworkers. Not one of those people is ever going to be able to tell you what happened in those 6 hours. Not one of them.
Don't need to.
You're going to hear me ask each one of them in this trial. Do you know whether or not Eric Richins knowingly ingested fentanyl? Do you know whether he accidentally ingested fentanyl thinking he was taking another kind of pill and it had fentanyl in it and he took it and accidentally ingested it? Do you know whether he mixed fentanyl with alcohol after Kouri went to sleep? The answer every single time from every single one of these witnesses is going to be no. Now here's what you will hear. You will hear that Eric suffered from pain a lot. That he suffered from knee and back pain related to his work. He did hard work. He was a stonemason, lifting heavy stones. And he also was a huge outdoorsman. He was hiking, snowmobiling, skiing, hunting, and he had pain in his back and his knees from that kind of activity. He also had been diagnosed with Lyme disease. He believed he had it, and he claimed to people that were very close to him that he suffered with intense bouts of pain that he believed was related to Lyme disease. But this is a man's man, this guy. He's a hunter. He's a macho guy, right? He didn't want to show weakness. He didn't want people to know he was suffering. He didn't share that with a lot of people. You're going to hear that Eric was so dependent on the drugs like the gummies that gave him relief from his pain that he would even take it and smuggle it in his luggage when he went on trips out of the country and out of the continental United States when you got to go through TSA. That's how much he needed that relief. Now you're going to hear on one of the calls that they were recording when Kouri was talking to her family, she tells her family that she purchased pain pills for Eric at his request. She purchased them from a woman named Carmen that she knew who cleaned her properties for her. And she knew Carmen had access to people that had drugs. You will hear that she asked Carmen to get oxycodone. Oxycodone, which is very similar to the hydrocodone that you saw in that pill bottle right there.
Your Honor, apologize. May we approach?
All right, something here made Mr. Bloodworth decide to have a sidebar with the court. Not sure what she said, but let's just jump ahead. Nothing to really comment on here. I just think she's starting to go into a problem with time. I think she's sort of losing any momentum she had in her flow of information. So here we have the first day the jury room was, the courtroom was pretty packed. A couple days after that, it was really thinning out, but I know today they had more. I don't know why this would take this much time. Is he saying that she misspoke on something? Obviously, he's saying that she violated something, but I don't.
It's going to happen a lot over the next 5 weeks, so get ready. You're going to hear that oxycodone is a fairly low dose pain pill that you can get prescriptions for. Most prescriptions for oxycodone are around the range of about 10 milligrams per pill. That's about, if your doctor gives you oxycodone, that's about what you usually get it for. If you want stronger oxycodone, like up to 30 milligrams, you generally either have to have a special prescription from a doctor or you're going to hear that you can get
Too much minutia. You're getting bogged down here. You're losing any momentum. So come on.
down the street, right? And the state has talked about this gentleman, Robert Crozier. Robert Crozier sold higher strength oxys, up to 30 milligrams. He's going to testify that back in 2022, before Eric died, that's all he sold was Oxy. That he didn't sell fentanyl at that time. It hadn't really got into the country yet, like it is now, right, where it's everywhere. It hadn't really happened yet. He was just selling Oxys, and he sold the stronger dose. So you're going to hear and you're going to see evidence that Kouri asked Carmen for something stronger, and that Carmen, you're going to hear from Mr. Crozier, purchased 30 milligram Oxys from Crozier. Crozier's going to say that is what he sold Carmen Lauber, was 30 milligram Oxy pills. You're also going to hear that in Eric's autopsy, there's no Oxy in his system. So the pills that were purchased by Carmen Lauber could not have been the cause of Eric's death. The fentanyl had to come from somewhere else. You're going to hear Carmen testify now that Kouri asked her for fentanyl. But what you're going to hear is that that was not Carmen's original story. That when Carmen was originally interviewed, she said no mention of fentanyl. It was all about Oxy. There was no fentanyl. Carmen talks like she doesn't even know what fentanyl is, right? Guess when she changes her testimony? She changes her testimony when the police say, hey, you know what? We caught you. We caught you with drugs. We caught you with guns. And if you don't say what we want you to say, you're going to jail for a really, really long time, federal and state. But we're going to give you a ticket. We're going to give you a free ticket to get out of all the trouble you're in. But you got to say Kouri said fentanyl. And she changes her story. You're going to get to evaluate her credibility and what you think of her. You're going to hear that just a few weeks before Eric died, guess where he was? Mexico. Guess where the fentanyl comes from into this country from? Mexico. Now, after you've listened to all the evidence in this case, after you've looked at all the exhibits, you're going to be asked to determine what happened in that 6 hours. Not the 3 years before, not the 2 years before, not the 1 year before, in those 6 hours.
Wrong. You got to look at the whole history of the relationship to see the motive. So she's wrong.
You're going to have to decide if Kouri Richins intentionally and knowingly poisoned secretly her husband, ending the life of the father of her kids, knowing that she was going to cause those little boys to feel pain every day for the rest of their life for the loss of their father.
That's true.
And that she did it for money. And that she did it for money that was less than what she was about to make on one of her own deals. For way less than what Eric Richins would have earned over the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Well, they wouldn't have been around together. She was leaving him for Grossman.
Way less than you knew she was guaranteed to get because she knew about the existence of the trust. She knew there's no guarantee on the assets or the home, right? Finally, you're going to be asked to determine whether or not the sandwich incident was an attempt to commit a murder. That's going to be an easy one for you. You're going to be asked to whether she lied to the life insurance companies. And I presume the state's going to argue that the lie was that she didn't cause his death. Because if you cause someone's death, you can't get the life insurance. So I guess that's what they're saying the fraud is. And then there's a little flyer that she got in the mail, that we've all gotten in the mail, that if you're a credit union member, about once or twice a year, you get this little thing in the mail that says, hey, we'll give you $100,000 for your life insurance. Just sign here because we are so glad you're our credit union member. And so she signed that a little while before Eric died for $100,000. $100,000. That's Eric Richins made that in 2 months, right? 3 months.
She needed everything she could get because she was going to have an income drop. It's $700,000 a year was not going to be flowing in to support her lifestyle with Grossman. So yeah, why not go for what she was thinking?
And they're saying she forged his name on that little flyer when she mailed it in. In order to prove that, they have to prove that Eric didn't allow her to do it. Now, I'm telling you right now, wives everywhere sign their husbands' names on a lot of things. You've got to find that she did it without his knowledge. And I don't know how they're going to prove that. Now, there is one piece of good news as you evaluate this evidence and the facts in this case. There is some good news for you. There are going to be a lot of facts that we actually agree on that we're not even going to challenge. We'll just be like, yeah, that happened. Hopefully that's going to help the case move a little faster for you guys. But interestingly, even though we're not going to dispute the facts, we sure are going to dispute what the facts mean. Sometimes you can look at the same facts and see two very different results. Let me show you what I mean. Katie, can you put up slide 12?
Is it up on your screen, Katie? 1 second, please.
The judge has to give us the pass to get into the
This
script.
happens from time to time. Okay.
Should have been ready to go.
Brittany. Q, do me a favor. Disconnect from table 1.
She's taking way too long.
Plug back in.
Should have kept it to 30 minutes or less. Defense counsel is my recommendation.
Okay, 1 moment.
There it is.
Yeah.
So look at this picture of a young woman in a fur coat. See it? Now look again. You see a witch? Nose, mouth. There's going to be times in this case where the state is going to discuss facts with certain witnesses, and they're going to show you the witch. And I'm going to take those same facts and those same witnesses, and I'm going to show you a widow. At the end of the trial, if you can still see both faces, that's reasonable doubt.
Okay, but what's
The judge has instructed you that the burden
she
of
was a widow, so I guess you're saying she was both a witch and a widow. I don't know how that helps your argument. She obviously was a widow, and you're basically saying there's evidence so she's also a witch. So I don't know how that's helping you.
proof in this case lies with this table. Katie, can you put up slide 13? Can you make it a little bigger, please? The law presumes the defendant is not guilty of the crime charge. She's innocent right now, and you have to accept that to do your job. The presumption persists.
Okay, right there, the law presumes, second sentence, law presumes the defendant is not guilty of the crime charge. I thought it was the law presumes the defendant is innocent. Where's the word innocent? There's nothing about innocent. I would object if I was a defense counsel, if I had a case like that.
Unless the prosecution's evidence convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. Katie, can you put up slide 14? This burden, this is a heavy burden for the state. We know that. And our Constitution gives them that burden. Our Constitution, that same Constitution, promises Kouri Richins a fair trial by a jury of her peers, and that's you, her fellow citizens, who took an oath to swear that you will stand between Kouri and the government and make them meet their duty before they can get through you. And they've got to meet it by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. More powerful than just more likely or not that she did it. It has to be firmly convincing you. There are very few things we know with absolute certainty. The criminal case doesn't require proof that overcomes every possible doubt. But if you think there is a real possibility that she is not guilty, you must give her the benefit of the doubt and find her not guilty. And that's the burden that's on your table. When you go back into that jury room, that's going to be on y'all's table.
I don't like the way she's saying it. If you think there's a real possibility she's not guilty, yeah, I don't. What about the fact that the burden of proof? I'd focus more on the burden of proof rather than what you're thinking about the defendant. Thinking about the defendant is more likely the jury's going to think bad thoughts about her, and so I don't think that's a good argument point to make.
We're asking you to be courageous, to pay attention, to stand strong, and to hold the government to that burden that's on their table. Hold them to it. And at the end of this case, you will see Kouri Richins is innocent She is counting on you to do your job. And the only proper verdict to return in this case, which we are going to ask you to return at the end of this case, is to find her not guilty on all charges. Thank you.
All right, let's let you stretch your legs, take a restroom break. All rise for the jury.
This took too long for defense opening statement. So overall, she didn't do a terrible job, but I think she started out strong and just sort of got lost in too much minutia detail of things. It didn't keep the flow going. And overall, I think the prosecution had a much better opening. I think they got to the point. They got to a lot of the evidence. Think about what evidence this attorney put up on slides for the jury to see. I didn't see anything in there that was...
Have a seat. Mr. Bloodworth, anything on the record before we take a restroom break?
Really showing anything of innocence.
No, Your Honor, maybe just a reminder to those that are subject to the exclusionary rule to, I guess, not return.
Let's have some clarity about that. I appreciate that.
Want me to do it? So, Your Honor, just to let the family know, so DJ and Ronnie cannot sit in for the trial. Miss Doreen can. We will let you know when you...
So what happens, for those who don't know, for an opening statement before the first juror is called or witness is called in front of the jury, everybody that's a witness can watch the openings. But as soon as the first witness is called, all those people have to be out of quorum. They're going to be called as witness unless there's an exception made. So everyone has, all these witnesses will be sequestered, kept out, unless there's like an exception made, like for family that's going to testify as to great things about their son or their brother. Those kind of folks, I think, should be allowed to remain in the courtroom. And the thing is, after someone testifies, they right away can be in the courtroom there and participate as an observer, unless they're subject to recall. But even then, if it's a family member, I would hope defense counsel would not object to that. But the way this attorney, what's her name, Kathy Nestor, the way she's attacked the family, I don't know if she's going to be the type to object to that. So let's see here.
Need to step out. And any other family members?
There's also an issue that came up where, as I recall, when I saw this on Monday, that there's some kind of a error in the instruction.
Lisa can stay for the trial, and any other people can stay because there's no other witnesses we expect.
And I want to make clear to DJ and Ronnie, the fact that you can't be in the courtroom is the functional equivalent of an order that you cannot listen to the testimony or talk to anybody about it. So you cannot watch the live stream. You can't read reports or listen to it. You are ordered to not be exposed to the testimony in this case.
Also, Your Honor, I failed to mention Bree Darden. I don't think she's planning on coming. She has a newborn. She's not going to be up here anyway, but just in case she thought about coming, Bree cannot sit in on the trial, okay? That's
All
it.
right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any clarification there, Mr. Bloodworth?
No, Your Honor, an additional issue, though. The jury oath. You referenced the jury oath. That was...
They get two.
I was going to say, I haven't... Right. Do we have the second one yet?
The second one is the one you heard. The first one is the one that was given to them before they were asked any questions by the jury team.
I understand, Your Honor. Thank you. That second one just didn't sound like the normal second one, so maybe I'm a little thrown.
Check with Ms. Shervanek. Let me know if you think there's any...
She's the...
Yeah, so one of the instructions was wrong, so they went back and clarified it. So overall then, I think it's looking really, really good for the prosecution. I think they got a really strong case. Yeah, Godzilla, Manstreet. I think she's going to go down on all charges. I'm not so much worried about the charge of the forgery and the insurance fraud. I think that they're gonna not be so much contingent. I think they're going to see what was happening, and like the attorney was saying, like, do we know for sure? He didn't say, yeah, go ahead and sign up for this 100,000. Go ahead and sign my name. So that one seems a little bit weak, but not worried about it. I think it's overall still showing that she was doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. If you think about it, Eric really had no clue really what his wife was about. She had so many things going on behind the scenes that he wasn't aware of. And I think if he was aware of it, I think he would have divorced her. So, but then again, he was, he seems like the kind of guy that's a family man, wants to keep the family intact. He doesn't want to have the boys separated from their mom. But the mom, on the other hand, hey, she's not in love with the boy's dad, and she'd rather move on. And if he's an impediment to her doing her business, and she likes this other guy Grossman, then he's expendable. So I think that it's looking really good for the prosecution. And what I want to do tonight is cover some of the rest of day one, because what I did see from the first day here was really, really damning against Kouri Richins. And the amazing thing about it is that this was brought up by the defense counsel. So I want to cover that tonight while hold on a second. When later tonight, when my lovely Leslie's going to be working, I figured I'd go ahead and do some more coverage, try to play catch up. And then next week, my brother John is going to be up there watching this trial and observing, so we can get some court feed from him on perceptions of things going on there. So that's the game plan. I'll try to cover some more this weekend to highlight some of the things that have had occurred here this week. So John, you're asking inklings on will she testify? I do not see her testifying when evidence is this damning, and they don't have anything to show exactly what was going on in the house at that time. So I think her defense counsel tell her, no, you don't want to. It's better to have reasonable doubt, because you can close in the gap, and if the jury sees you lying about what you're doing that night, because the prosecutor will really be honing in on those kind of details. So if she comes across as not credible at that point, that right there could do her in. So I don't foresee her testifying at all. And so we also, on day one, there'll be some video showing how she reacted with the body cam of the police there, showing how she reacted initially when the cops were there, and does she look like she's a grieving widow or not? So that's what we're going to cover again later tonight. So there'll probably be 10 o'clock Central Time. So adjust that for whatever time zone you're in. And with that, do you guys have any other questions before I sign off here? If you do have questions, I always ask for like red emojis. It's the quickest way to me to spot that. Let me go back up here, see if there's any other questions. I didn't really take questions during this coverage because I wanted to keep the flow going. Or Flair, you don't think I'll be impressed with the defense lawyer? Yeah, there's some stuff that comes up here in day one that's really, really bizarre. Julie, okay, you're asking how the prosecutor's doing. You're undecided. I got to see some more of the trial, but from what I've seen so far, I think they're doing fine. Jack's mom, do I already have Kouri convicted? Legally she's presumed innocent, but I'm telling you, it's like from my experience in watching a trial, I can just go and listen to openings, and I have a pretty good idea on who's got the upper hand. I say prosecution has definitely the upper hand on this one. There's a lot of damning information, a lot of it against Kouri. Yeah, we'll probably hear from this Grossman guy, her boyfriend. I mean, really, what kind of guy would stick around a woman that has got 3 kids and killed her husband? What kind of guy would be interested in somebody like that as a long-term mate? So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. And like I say, I hope to be on later tonight. And so thanks for covering justice on this case, and more to follow. Stay tuned. Have a good day.